Welcome to my channel. This is a demonstration of an Alla Prima portrait from life. I'm once again painting my friend Jim, who was kind enough to sit for me. We're trying a different camera angle out. We thought this would give a better angle on the model, Jim. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it gives a good enough angle on the painting, so we'll have to see how it turns out. I may wind up putting the camera back where it was. We moved it because it was kind of in the way. This camera is about the same distance from the easel linearly than as I am when I stand back and mix colors and look at things. I did wind up managing to knock over this camera even though it was further out of the way, just because I'm clumsy. But anyway, I'm here just drawing in Jim, and obviously the drawing doesn't really look like Jim, and that's okay because it gives me all the information I need to understand the size and proportion of things and placement of features, and that gives me all the information I need to work in paint to sort of build all the rest that I need to achieve a likeness. I am adding in some additional marks for planes of the face and shadow shapes, just because as with a live model, it really helps to have those marks. So when they move a little too far out of where they were before, I can sort of guide them back just by looking at the shadow shapes. And the angle you're seeing Jim here is obviously not the same angle that I'm seeing him, so the shadows on his face won't look exactly the same to me from my perspective. And here I'm just scrubbing in some background. The background from my perspective had some shadow over it. It looked gray, but it was neutral or maybe even a little bit warm. And the background I have in here turned out to be a little too cool. I tried to work a little bit of red into it to neutralize it a little bit, but it still, I think, is a little cooler than I would have liked. And here I'm just, as I normally do, just filling in the shadow section. And if you notice this, it's a lot easier to see with the lighter background than it is with the darker background. Those shadows look very dark and they look nothing like human skin. But when you see the whole face sort of filled out with paint, it makes a lot more sense. So it's important for me as I'm going through this process to remember that I'm not painting a face, I'm painting shapes of color and value. And eventually, if I do that correctly across the whole surface, eventually it'll sort of look like the subject, and that's kind of what I do here. I did pre-mix colors, which is not on camera, so I pre-mixed a value string for the shadow colors and a value string for the colors in direct light on the face. I didn't mix any other colors like for the hair or for the shirt. And you'll see I do those very quickly. I actually wound up having to repaint the hair because it didn't come out the way I was hoping. And sometimes when I'm sort of winging it, that does occur, And Jim had some knee pain during this process, so we took quite a few breaks. You'll see him standing up every once in a while just to try to get his knee in a better position. He was a real trooper. Sitting here, it's just so much fun having a live model in the studio. And you'll see Jim talking quite a lot. I was not the most attentive listener because sometimes I'm very focused on seeing and mixing and whatever. So I apologize to Jim about not being the most attentive listener during this process, but hopefully it's worth it. I think this may have been where I knocked over the camera. It's at a slightly different angle now. Sometimes that'll happen in the studio. And now I'm just working on getting his eyes in. As soon as you start to see the eyes, things start to look a little more like Jim. And once I get the beard in and the hair in, then it starts to look even more like Jim. And what I'm doing here, again, as I'm working very quickly just to try to capture a likeness, what I would maybe want to do in a longer sitting or multiple sittings is do this process a little more slowly, or even if I don't, once it's done, go through and start refining things and noticing things like edges that maybe I wish were softer or harder or whatever, adding different variations in the skin tones. That's stuff that I would do after the fact once I had everything kind of settled. But in a quick sketch like this, there's just no time for that. So you really got to work as hard as you can to get the marks you put in to be the right ones. And if they're not, If there's things like I really can't live with, I'll go in and wipe things off and fix them. I do that with the nose here. I wind up noticing that somehow I kind of lost the nose and some of the shadow shapes. And you see Jim kind of get up and walk away here, and I'm still painting. And the reason it is because when I'm standing back, I'm looking at Jim. When I walk towards the canvas to paint, I'm not looking at Jim because my whole frame of reference would be different. So I'm really painting from memory at that point. So if I'm up at the canvas and he walks away and I'm still working, that's fine. I'm going off of what is in my sort of mental impression of what that was. And here you see me just wiping stuff off for the hair because it just wasn't right. And I go back in and try to add a little more shadow into the hair to make it a little more three-dimensional. And here's where I start reworking Jim's nose because I lost that shape. And I start painting in the lips. And the lips are interesting because the color of the lips that we had gotten just from, the canvas tone actually looked pretty reasonable, but they didn't look full. So I had to go in and paint a little bit of the lips, but not a lot, just to add a little bit of shadow, a little bit of highlight. And here I'm just very quickly filling in the shirt. And we had a few jokes around what kind of shirt we were going to put on Jim. We thought maybe we'd do a 1970s style collared shirt, but we decided not to in the end. And this is the final painting, and I hope Jim likes it. I have a website, which is robertosuzuki.art. Instagram is at roberto_suzuki_art. And Facebook is fb.com/robertosuzukiart. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. Thank you.